newspaper of 8 June 2015. Shall I proceed, Mr. Speaker?
Yes, you can.
This day newspaper of 8 June 2015 has a very disturbing headline. It says that unemployment rate climbs to 7.5% in first quarter. That's the first quarter of 2015. Then as a follow-up on the National Bureau of Statistics website, it was stated that the unemployment rate has skyrocketed into 9.90% in the third quarter of 2015. Mr. Speaker, there is an age-long aphorism, and it states that an idle hand is the devil's workshop. The very, very alarming rate of unemployment in this country has provided a leeway for people with nefarious behaviors to thrive. Now, if we are appropriating money for security, appropriating money for arms procurement, it is my humble opinion that we need to put the horse before the cart rather than the cart before the horse. What do I mean? I mean that we should strive to provide gainful employment to those who are able and willing to work. Mr. Speaker, I want to refer us to a particular section of the 1999 Constitution, Section 14, subsection 2, paragraph B of the 1999 Constitution states that the security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. Mr. Speaker, I was referring the attention of my honorable colleagues to a certain provision in the Constitution that is to the effect that the security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. And as I said earlier, the intention of the drafters, in my own view, is that security and welfare, they go hand in hand. If we are appropriating money for security and we are not appropriating something considerable for welfare, and how can we create a welfaristic society for our people without providing gainful employment opportunities for them? Over the years, we have seen some of our politicians do what they call empowerment programs. But to the best of my knowledge, some of these empowerment programs don't actually go to the root of providing gainful employment, because it is evident, especially in my own constituency, in the area where I come from, politicians give out handouts, stipends to youths, and in the twinkling of an eye, the money would have been spent over what's not. And the fundamental issue of unemployment would not, they would not have been able to address the fundamental issue of unemployment. So this motion is just to draw the attention of the executive arm of government to actually set up the action of government to set up a consolidated youth endowment fund. This youth endowment fund I'm talking about, though is the prerogative of the executive, because we have heard of similar schemes in the past. This consolidated youth endowment fund would have very, very easy requirements for people who are enterprising, for people who are hardworking. They would have very easy requirements for them to access funds so that they can stand on their own. And I want to believe that if people are able to stand on their own and have means of livelihood, means of survival, we would have reduced to the barest minimum the incidences of youth restiveness, youth anarchy, and youth disturbance in the society. So on this note, I would like to humbly appeal to my colleagues to support this motion. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Right Honorable Speaker, very distinguished colleagues, my name is Honorable Prince Adetayo Abimbola Adekunle. I represent the youth of Oyo Central Senatorial District. Mr. Speaker, a lot has been said about the ongoing crisis in the National Youth Council of Nigeria. While I would not want to belabor the issue or go on unnecessary tautology and repetition, I would just advise that we take a very, very careful position on the subject matter. First and foremost, as Honorable Ezeala said, that 3 court judgments had been given in favor of a certain presidential aspirant or candidate, as it were. But with my little knowledge of law, I understand that once a notice of appeal has been filed and motion for stay of execution gotten, the judgment automatically remains in the cooler while waiting for the pronouncement of the Court of Appeal. Because the 3 judgments came from courts of coordinate jurisdiction, the Federal High Court in Lagos, in Abuja, and I think one in Benin. So I would recommend us, Mr. Speaker, first and foremost, the Ministry of Youth and Sports Development, in close collaboration with the Nigerian Youth Parliament, set up a committee that will serve as impartial arbiters between the 4 warring factions. Because, as we all know, our judicial processes takes very long time before we conclude them. So if the Parliament, in conjunction with the ministry, can serve as arbitrators to wade into the issues of those 4 factions, let the 4 factions be advised to submit probably 1 or 2 names to serve as caretaker committee to conduct elections into the National Youth Council of Nigeria. I believe that if this is done, it will go a long way in ameliorating the crisis in the Youth Council. That's side 1. Side 2, in my own humble opinion, I do not see an organization registered under Part C of the Company and Allied Matters Act, Cap C20, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, as the umbrella body of Nigerian youths. In my honest opinion, again, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleagues, the NYCN, to me, is in the same league with the NURTW or any other cooperative society. So far, it is registered under Part C of the Company and Allied Matters Act. In this regard, the Nigerian Youth Parliament enjoys one privilege, which is presidential proclamation before inauguration. This is the same privilege enjoyed by the Senate and the House of Representatives. So, in view of this, as long as we have a protracted crisis in the National Youth Council of Nigeria, I want to recommend that the federal government withdraws the recognition of that body pending the resolution of the crisis either by arbitration or by a court of competent jurisdiction. Honorable Darlington made allusions to the fact that we should write to the CJN to make sure the appeals that is being slated for hearing be heard faster. I'm sorry, the Parliament may not be able to take that position. Otherwise, we might be seen as busybodies in law. I'm aware that only parties to a suit can request for accelerated hearing, and even at that, they must show urgency before that application can be granted. So, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, the House, the Nigerian Youth Parliament, otherwise known as the House, should set up a committee in conjunction with the Ministry of Youth and Sports to serve as the arbiter between the 4 warring factions, advise members of the warring factions to withdraw lawsuits from court so that good sense can prevail. And as I said earlier, the Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports should withdraw recognition given to the National Youth Council of Nigeria pending the resolution of the crisis. Mr. Speaker and distinguished colleagues, culture, but unfortunately currently at subsistence level. Recollect that agriculture was the mainstay of Nigerian economy before the discovery of oil. Note further that the decline in global oil prices makes diversification and return to agriculture a necessity, observes that agriculture has the capacity to absorb a high number of youths, thereby reducing unemployment. The Parliament is aware that the African Development Bank has set aside about $300 million for youth empowerment in agriculture under the Enable Youth Scheme. The Parliament resolves to urge the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Finance to initiate process to access this fund without delay. Second prayer, also urge the federal government to liaise with all agricultural research institutes in the country to organize trainings for youths in agriculture. Mr. Speaker, I so move.
Thank you very much. And then, before we go to the contributions, any seconder for his motion? I can't see any hands raised. Honorable Bande Gideon.
Mr. Speaker, my name is Honorable Bande Gideon. I represent the good people.
Who is now the president of the African Development Bank, initiated the Enable Youth Scheme. The Enable Youth Scheme is to encourage the active participation of youths in agriculture. And for this sole purpose, the sum of $300 million has been set aside by the African Development for this laudable scheme. However, it is disheartening to note that while smaller countries like Togo, Gabon, and Cameroon have fully benefited for this fund, Nigeria, the so-called giant of Africa, is paying lip service by not paying their counterpart funding on time so that this fund can be accessed. If this fund is accessed, youths between the ages of 18 to 35 would be beneficiaries of the Enable Youth Scheme. That's one. Two, the plan is to engage 1,000 youths in each of the 36 states and another 1,000 in the FCT. So that's direct jobs of 37,000. And we can begin to wonder what the multiplier effect would look like. For those who come onto the scheme, they will be trained by a combination of international agric research experts and our local experts here. And after their training, each youth will get a $50,000 grant. And I think that even with the capacity of some of our members in this house, the likes of Honorable Mari Tudaye and others, I'm very sure that if we are able to lay our hands on a grant as high as $50,000, we'll be able to do massive exploits in agriculture. So I want this parliament to stand for the Nigerian youths by urging the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Finance to initiate moves as soon as possible to get these funds out without delay. It is on this note that I urge my distinguished colleagues to support this motion. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Thank you, distinguished colleague. Any other contributors? Please, okay.
That'll be the primary purpose of government. Unfortunately, government has failed to create a welfareistic society, and today we are in all sorts of security problems. Today's event is a watershed in the history of corporate social responsibility in Nigeria, and I want to use this opportunity to thank the Nigerian Bottling Company for providing this platform to bridge the employability gap that is so obvious in our youth. I'm a youth leader. I interact with a lot of youths. I have piles of CVs in my house of people looking for jobs, even when majority of them are not employable. So it gives me very great joy to be at this occasion today to witness the start of what would later lead to the end of youth unemployment in Nigeria.
For Nigerian Bottling Company, I'd like to commend you, and I'd like to conclude these brief remarks in the words of that famous American lawyer, Albert Pike, who stated that what we do for ourselves alone dies with us, but what we do for others and the world remains and is immortal. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Of Martin Luther King says that the function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education. Then Kofi Annan says, myself, Adetayo Abimbola, I submitted thus. I said, education yields the greatest return on investment. Hence the age-long aphorism. Education is the best legacy parents can give to their offspring and the primary legacy a nation can give to our citizens. To the young age now, not because of health reasons or economic reasons, but because people want to make money overnight. Several people I mean, it's not possible. We have to be realistic. So, what Adetayo Adekunle Education Support Initiative, AAESI for short, means that we want to partner with the likes of our daddy here and other well-to-do individuals, and even His Excellency the Governor, take the lead by going to their respective alma mater to serve as volunteer teachers, even if it is just for 1 hour. It is not window dressing. It goes a long way into the hearts of those children. The professor, so that is the first goal of education. 2, these materials to some of our schools. Take a initiative. Then 3rd and finally, we also intend to leverage with members of the develop certain policies and laws that will be easily implementable. First class. Because we are not encouraging merit in education, if there is a law in Oyo State, for instance, that says that all ministries, departments, have privilege to go to National Assembly and speak, to go to various speaking engagements in and out of the country. But kilo fun opportunity go so with our UL primary and secondary school. Because the foundation about the war straight
to my community. I have done free health mission, I have gotten amnesty for prisoners, I have gotten scholarships for certain number, but we are concentrating on education because we believe our future in this country depends solely on education. This is because we cannot do anything without harnessing our human resources. If we don't harness our human resources properly, our mineral resources cannot be tapped into. And this program is a catch them young thing. That is why we are starting from our primary and secondary school. And as you heard earlier, we are going to work with UNESCO, we'll work with National Council on Education, we'll work with the National and State Assembly, as well as the private sector for us to take this initiative forward.